Sometimes the parables that Jesus speaks about and uses, people behave in ways that others would find surprising or even foolish. The behavior of the father in the parable of the prodigal son comes to mind. He gives an extraordinary welcome to a son who had gone off and has nothing to deserve in his welcome. He had spent all his money. He was, I love the word, profligate. But that prodigal son comes back to great welcome and charity. The reaction of the older brother, however, in that prodigal son story is a story about how he kept a hold of his brother and still accused him of many things. Many people would have reacted the same way about that welcome that the father had been giving. This afternoon's story, this parable of the workers in the vineyard, is a little bit like that parable. We have to pull it apart. We have to, take the threads out to see what's really going on. The behavior of the owner of the vineyard would have been considered very strange and even foolish in Jesus' time to give a day's wage to workers who only worked 1 hour, 3 hours, or whatever. Many people tend to react to the parable somewhat negatively, even today, and I think I have in the past when I've read it and proclaimed it. Just as we often feel sorry for the older son in the parable of the prodigal son, we kind of feel sorry for those who worked the whole day in the heat and the sweat, and they just got their usual daily wage. Well, what is strange and unsettling in this parable this afternoon is that those who worked for only an hour also got the full wage. Jesus began this parable with the telling words, "The kingdom of heaven is like." It's about the kingdom of heaven. The parable is saying something about how God relates to us, individually, uniquely. Jesus is saying that God is extraordinarily generous. There is nothing calculating about how God relates to us, about how one of us or another one of us has worked for the kingdom, how many hours, how many days, how many years. God's giving is not dependent on our doing. It's on our being, that we are lovable by God. There can come a time in our lives when, for some reason or another, we can't do a great deal. We might not be able to do what we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That may be because of age, inability, disability, or whatever it might be. We might not find ourselves in the same place we were 20 years ago, but we're here now. Jesus seems to be saying that where we are is a good place to be, and what we are able to do or unable to do has no impact on how God relates to us. God does not ask us to be deserving, but to be receptive. To be receptive, and then to share what we receive from Him with one another. All God asks us to do is to be receptive. Our God is a living and a loving God. You just have to accept it and let Him in and be lovable.